of this is. And so that's what I was reading this morning. And then in headlines, it's basically, DeepSUI introduces a more sophisticated benchmark for coding, for long horizon coding and engineering tasks, for example. Well, here's what the difference is between SUIBench Pro and DeepSUI. DeepSUI is from not a DeepSeek related thing. It's just everybody's using deep, I think, as a way of indicating that deep neural networks are being used somehow in the process. So deep is a confusingly, widely used term here, but this is a new software engineering benchmark. So previously, Claude Opus 4.7 was at 64%. On the new, it drops down to 54%. And GPT 5.5, previously at 59% on SUIBench Pro, goes up to 70%. And not only 70%, but it does so with a dramatically lower use of tokens to achieve that score. Then on top of all of that, there was investigation by this company that was building this new benchmark to clearly identify which one of these is the leader in that coding race. It showed that Claude Opus did something that the other ones didn't, that may be an indication of just how smart Claude Opus is. But in the published tasks also is the solution. And none of the other models looked at the solution and included it in its result, but Claude Opus did, giving rise to a reference in the VentureBeat article that Claude was cheating to achieve its previous score. Okay, so all of this is going to be torn apart over the course of the next 24 hours by many people, including many who will try to defend their position. One of the things that's interesting is that on the same day, Grok Build CLI was released, and Grok Build, as you know, was we talked about it quickly yesterday. This is a new model that uses 1.5 trillion and all of the cursor data to create a new coding agent. And that one it'll be very interesting to see where it comes out on SUIBench Pro and also where it comes out on this new measure, DeepSUI. Who knows? But right now, I'm playing with Claude Code and Codex at the same time. I've come to really appreciate the speed and rapidity of arrival at a really usable interface on an application that I'm building, compared to Claude Code, which is nonetheless doing a really deep and thorough job getting things just right in the preparation for eventually creating a well-designed UI. But I got much faster on Codex to where I can actually work with the application and provide usability feedback to the agent. It's taken me much, much farther on the Codex branch than on the Claude Code branch. So I'm very interested in what comes out of this, but I also still believe that the many enterprises that are using Claude Code and all the influencers and practical coders who are out there who say great things about Claude Code, they're not going to be daunted by this new information that Codex is, coming out on top.
Right, yeah. Right. Because it all matters about what the end result is, right?
Right.
So.
And Jeff from our comments has been pro Codex since day one, really. So Jeff continues to be Codex. I continue to say I will play more with Codex, and then I just fall back on Claude Code because I'm comfortable there. And specifically, not even the CLI. I've only ever built I built in the CLI, but abandoned it pretty quickly, and only ever built in the dashboard. In fact, Claude Code is building while I'm doing the show right now. So it's off in the background, taking care of things for me. So I'll have to look into it, but I am actually really excited to see what Grok does with all that data coming out of Cursor, because I think that's really, really interesting as well. Jimmy, I know we want to get to obviously to Nikki and
sure. What's the news piece you have for us today?
Real quick, I just want to bring this up because we last week, maybe the week before, it's starting to mesh together. But we saw that video of the Figure robot was supposed to do like an 8-hour test. It had a live feed of an 8-hour test and was flipping the packages over to be the serial number or the skin down, right? That was the whole point of it. Well, it ended up going, I forget the number now, it was like 250 hours or 250,000 packages with 0 errors. And it was a huge success. Well, I don't know because of that, but today there was an announcement, or yesterday, excuse me. Figure has signed a commercial agreement with Catalyst Brands. If you're like me, you didn't know who that was, but they're the operator of JCPenney, Aeropostale, and Brooks Brothers to deploy human robots at scale. The partnership will be, the initial deployment will be in Reno, Nevada. Figure, founded by Brett Adcock, continues to expand its commercial footprint. Okay. And another step forward. So Brett had posted about it. Figure had posted about it. So that's where a lot of this is coming from. I didn't read more into it to know like exactly how they're being deployed. Is it in fact in the same kind of settings for the production warehouses for the major brands of JCPenney, Aeropostale, and textiles? I don't know. Regardless, though, it's a pretty big deal, and I do wonder if that very public, very live test of Figure going for hours upon hours upon hours without error didn't hurt. Now, we all know these deals don't happen in 24-hour periods. So sure. The more likely answer here is that it was well in the works prior to that. They also might have had insider knowledge of knowing what Figure the robots were capable of well before the live test. So I'm sure there's more to this. These deals are too complicated, and they very rarely happen in a vacuum or very fast. So more than likely,
it could have been part of the contract in the beginning, right?
What's
as
that?
Part of the marketing side of things. It's like, oh, how are we going to market this deal? Well, let's show our robots doing the job for 24 hours.
Yeah, and then announce the partnership. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. You know, a lot of times we go with this show and we talk about like, you know, it's like, well, where's the read between the lines? What's the marketing ploy here? Especially with so many IPOs. That's not a Figure thing, but like with so many big IPOs supposed to be happening this year or very soon, you always have to kind of put that back on there and be like, well, what are they really telling us? What's the story they really want us to know right now? So anyway, I'll keep it there. It's really short. I have other news items, but I would much rather hear what Nikki has to share.
And on that note, yes, I'm excited to move on to our next segment, which is highlighting digital thanatology with Nikki Weiss. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. This is an exciting topic for me, and I think our viewers and the people that we have in chat are going to have a field day with discussing the depth of this topic. So why don't you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background information, and tell us what is digital thanatology?
Well, before I dive into the actual definition of digital thanatology, I kind of want to bridge the conversation what Brian said, because my brain is just on fire right now. Humanoid robots. I mean, what it's taking us down is, what does it mean to be human? I mean, if we're going to be replaced, then what is our human equity? How do we start defining who we are as this meat sack in this, we want to call it singularity, matrix? I'm not sure. I think all of us are just like, WTF, what does it mean to be human today? So bridging into thanatology. So let me just say the most humanistic experience we will all go through is our physical death. So thanatology, for those that don't know, 101, think of Thanos from Marvel Comics, or Thanatos, which is the Greek god of death. Thanatology is the study of death and dying. I am a digital thanatologist because I focus on our digital afterlife, or what does our digital footprint mean in today's world and transitioning into the next world, whether it's a matricy or the void, or whatever your belief is. But we need to discover, so much to talk about. So we can go super high and super like superficial, or we can go down deep, the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole. And what does it mean to be human in this digital world?
Well, I'm always a fan of Alice in Wonderland, and yes, Gareth.
Should we take some DMT before we go there?
Yes, but I was also aware of Thanatos. If you don't know, I'm a big fan of mythology and other things like that. You see this book over here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Which one is it?
Right.
Which book is it?
Oh, that's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition Player's
there you
Handbook.
go.
So if you're not familiar with Dungeons and Dragons,
I like that you went to a different voice to say that, Jimmy.
well, of course,
you code switched. You had a different
my
voice.
professor voice. Well, just to let you know, that kind of thing.
I like the idea that might be your D&D voice.
In a world thousands of years ago. No. Well, before we start the deep dive, Nikki, for everybody who doesn't know you, tell us a little about yourself, background. How did you get into all of this?
How does somebody become a thanatologist? So part of living is dying. We're all going to die. And as a thanatologist and a founder of a death tech company, so I do own a death tech company called Endevo. People are like, how did you get started? So started with my family story, because many of us, our greatest gifts come from our deepest pain. Behind me are my parents. My father was 42. My mother was 50 when they both lost their lives to cancer, 10 years apart. So for me, growing up as a child, dealing with death and illness was just very much part of my childhood. I was 11 when my father passed. And then when my mother was diagnosed and then passed, I was 21. So it was just, I was wired for it. Not everybody is. I'm one of 4 children. 2 of my siblings want nothing to do with it. And then 2 of us are very much involved. First part of my career, because of my experience, I actually worked in hospice as a bedside clinician, supporting families as they transition to this end stage of life. And for those of you who have personally had a family member or a loved one go through hospice, not all of the experiences have been positive, but for many people, hospice has been a very positive experience. But certainly watching someone transition, it's a gift. I don't know where everybody is on the woo realm, but in my mind, you don't get any closer to God than sitting with someone who is actually transitioning from physical into whatever your belief is. And I felt it very much a gift. But when I turned 40, I actually realized I honored the gift, but I wanted to make some money. So I transitioned from being a hospice clinician to doing project management work. And that's where I've been for the last 20 years as a project manager, mostly in healthcare. If people were creeping on my LinkedIn profile, you'll see. And so I was able to, yes, make money, and at the same time, be able to start building those business acumen and understanding what it means, to be working, building projects, both digital and business projects, operational projects as well. It was about 3 years ago that my husband and I realized, we had not updated our wills since our kids were in high school. And now they're in their 30s, we're grandparents. So he and I started to go through the process. And by the way, one of my brothers happens to be an estate attorney, so we got a really good deal. But the story I tell is that even knowing death is easy for me, meaning I'm comfortable talking about it, and administratively as a project manager, the step-by-step process, it's overwhelming. Like there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done. I'm good with that. But even as I was going through second time, it's not even the first time, we were just updating our wills. I was finding it complicated. It's a second marriage. We've got adult children. Who makes the decisions? We don't have like long-term care insurance. What are we going to do at end of life? Like it's mind-boggling how many pieces. So I took a step back and I'm like, this is actually like a real problem. Like there's reasons why people don't have, why almost 70%, at least again, American focus, but this is a worldwide problem, why people don't have comprehensive plans it's when life happens, because part of living is dying. We're all going to die. We'll die one of 3 ways. We'll die either 1, sudden and unexpected, or we'll die of a terminal diagnosis, or 3, we'll need a long-term care plan. But we're going to go one of those 3 ways, folks. So why aren't people planning for it? Why don't we talk about it? So I started to take a deeper dive. I reconnected with all of my hospice peeps, asking asking what their numbers were. And I had been away from hospice for almost 20 years.
Mm.
The numbers haven't changed. People are still coming into hospice 6 days, 6 weeks, instead of what in the United States, it's a fully paid for program. Like, it's the one benefit in the United States that is fully funded. And that's 6 months of hospice, believe it or not. But people still come in late. So I'm like, why is this so taboo? Why are people not planning for it, talking about it? And what's more importantly, what's going to change the conversation? And I realized what's going to change the conversation is our data.
Mm.
So now, in the last 3 years, I'm having so many meaningful conversations with people, even knowing they don't want to talk about hospice and dying and what does it mean. But if I say to them, hey, if you died tomorrow and your phone died with you, think about multi-factor authentication. How much of a shit show would it be for those you left behind?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now I've got people willing to talk to me about it.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I want to hear a lot more, Nikki, but this is really timely for me. My wife and I, we're back now, but we just celebrated our 20th anniversary about 2 weeks ago. But in doing that, we decided to take a 2.5 week trip. And although that was great, and it was over to Europe, and it was a long cruise and things like that, it was by a considerable amount, the first time we were that long away from our 15-year-old daughter. She was staying back home, had school to do. So it was a big test on both ends of it, obviously. But as you would imagine, one of the things we are pretty good with what we had with our will. And I would say, I hope we were doing better than some in what we did have, which was very paper oriented and safety deposit boxes, but it did have a clear trail. And I will say it was nice in the sense that well, I didn't know about your business. Maybe I would have been using what you had built, but we did use a digital product, and you're right. The digitizing process, I'm sure there's a better digitization, whatever the right word is for that, of going through that process, and so much more of it was digital based, founded than anything we had before. And so it really did change the structure, how my wife and I had to think about it. The core stuff was still the core stuff. Ours is pretty simple. It's just my wife and I. We haven't been married before, so, and there's not lots of property and stuff, so things are fairly simplistic, and we have one child, so things are easy in that way. But still, she's a minor, and she still has to have somebody look after her in the incoming years and stuff like that. So I wanted to say that this is really timely from that side, and also just to thank you for your years in hospice, but what you're doing now. Lots of people have hospice stories. I do. My mom passed when she was 56, and those last 2 weeks were in hospice. And I thank God every day for hospice.
I just got the chills.
For what they did for my family is there's not a dollar figure you can put on it. It's insurmountable in my mind. The care, and I mean, this is, look, I was a firefighter and EMT. This is over multiple shifts of multiple people. I never once ever walked into that hospice facility without feeling absolutely supported and loved. So I have the most admiration for the folks that do that. So thank you for doing that. And what I'll also say too is, we had several sort of false starts, I suppose, about hey, listen, your mom the vitals look this way or that way. And so we would gather. Well, this went on for 2 nights, and my mom's Irish and Irish and American, and my dad and stuff. So we tend to do okay with the stories and the death side of it. We, more laughing and things like that, enjoy whatever. But there's some funny stories that I'm sure you would appreciate, Nikki, about, we wanted my mom to pass peacefully, obviously. And it's the first night. And we felt that we were too loud in the room, and we were perhaps being disruptive. And so we had this meeting of the mind, which sounds so silly to me, but my dad, my brother, and me, and we thought maybe we're being too disruptive to my mom, right? So then the next night comes around, and it's dead silence, right? And so, but my mom doesn't pass. She goes to the next day, and then the night was a Friday, and then she passes around in that day. And I only say that to say, like, it's an absurd thing to go through. But there you are, and thank God for places like hospice where you have the the controlled environment to go through the crazy conversations about, were we being too loud in the room yesterday? Were we cracking too many jokes? Was that disruptive to my mom who's just trying to pass on, and stuff like that. And so it was just a whole thing. And it's like this seared in memory of hospice from that time. But overall, such a positive memory of being there despite the situation, obviously.
Well, my heart is singing on so many levels. What was your mom's name? Because I just feel the chills.
Pat. Yeah, Pat.
I could she kind of was laughing along with you, and just to take a step, right? So now we're in the physical realm right now, right? So let's talk physical. When someone is in that transition, right? I say they're like straddling both worlds, right? They're like still in the physical, but they've got one foot in the other space. Again, it's all based on your beliefs and whatever you believe. She's over there, and if she was Irish Catholic, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. So she probably had a lot of things to work out with.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. And I, like you, have heard umpteen stories about when someone actually does, like, what is it that makes them take that last breath, that last, like, I'm good to go. Or
right.
I've been working with, very young people that don't want to go. And it's like they're sucked into the other side and they leave a lot faster, or they never got a chance to say goodbye, or the stories. These are the human stories that we need to hold on to. Not everyone has positive experiences with hospice, and for multiple reasons, but I want to honor that. Yes, I'm so glad that you shared this positive one. But now imagine, let me ask you, did you guys record or videotape any of the moments with your mom?
At the end, so my mom passed from a battle with breast cancer. She had beaten it, got it again, and then there was about an 8-month period. So in our situation, because to your point, there's 3 different ways to go, and hers was not terribly long, but months, not sudden. And so there was an opportunity for a long time before she was on pain meds that hindered her ability to have natural conversations, coherent conversations. So there were all those conversations we're able to have. We didn't record anything. And by those days, I do know that I remember my mom, she was so thin and frail from where she was that I have one picture of her hand, like of my hand on her hand. And that's it, because she did not want to be remembered in that state. So there's nothing from those days. And
I want to honor that. So the fact that she stated, I don't want to be remembered in that state.
Yeah, correct.
That is that to me as a digital thanatologist. Now we're getting into ethical issues, because I'm starting to see, especially on social media, people that are recording themselves from diagnosis to death. And I have seen so many, and now you've got like Hospice Julie and Hospice Lauren, like you've got all these hospice influencers out there, and people are now starting to record their loved ones, whether they have consent or not, which is like a whole nother conversation, but like actively dying. And you were there by your mother's bedside as she was actively dying, and like heartbreaking, like that's not, death with dignity. That's not. And some people is like, they're putting that on the platforms. And I'm like, did you get that person's consent? Do they really want that out there? And if so, do you own that? You don't own that data now. And how do you honor a person who has, their deepest, most vulnerable moment of their entire human life next to being born is now out on the internet? And yes, as a family member, you want to look what we just went through and honor, but taking that moment. So I just am in full respect that your mom was able to say, you can videotape my hand or take a picture of my hand, but nothing else.
And so I'm curious, I'm really curious, Andy, to hear, because I know I don't want to speak, but Andy, you've done so much work for yourself and things that you've done as far as journaling. I guess, I don't know, digital journaling. Would that be the right way to say it, Andy?
A digital legacy.
Yes.
I've been involved in attempting to do digital legacy for my person and for my family, principally, for a long time. And I'll give you just an example about why that's so important in the context of what Nikki is creating, which is I'm 15 years older than my second wife, who I've been with now for 30 years. And we have a daughter, and now I have a grandson on the property, as you know, and this whole house is managed by me in terms of finances and lots of other technical requirements. And I was approached by my daughter Ella not so long ago, maybe a couple of months ago. She said, "Dad, if you pass on, how are we going to do this?" And I said, "Don't worry, I'm in the process of building an AI representation of everything that I know, and you'll be able to speak to me and ask me any question about that, and it'll actually be able to act on my behalf after I'm gone in order to handle all of those things that you currently don't have any awareness of, or even, or I don't have the time, or we don't have the interest in advance of my passing to kind of teach you all of the things that I do to keep this operation going, because this is something that's as you know, we have a nonprofit operation that basically is the life's love and work for both my wife and my daughter. That's going to proceed beyond my being here to support it. And so I need to really prepare them for and give them access to all of the information that I currently have. AI is going to make that possible. And I think this is in alignment with what you're talking about, Nikki, maybe in a broader sense than just creating all of the necessary estate documentation. We have an estate
administrative, right? It's not just and I just want to, not a correction, but just enhance what you're saying, because I think when I say end of life planning, people just assume like the legal, the estate stuff. And for me, it really is, it is the legal, financial, physical, and digital, right? So, it's not just the wills and trusts and power of attorney, but it's like, do you have all of your finances, which it sounds like you are? And then like, you die tomorrow, Andy, do you want to be buried or cremated? What do you want with the ashes? Like, do you believe in hospice? Do you live in a death with dignity state? Long-term care, like what does that end of life quality look like? So all of those decision making, and now we have the digital piece, right? The interoperability of your digital assets. Who's going to own them? Can we tokenize them? Should they be put on the blockchain? Like those are like there's a lot of planning going on. So I think I am like fascinated to want to talk to you more, because you are starting to create the vision that I think that, and there's an ethical issue around that. So let's talk deeper. I did interrupt you, but let's talk deeper, right? It's like, Andy, if you were on my podcast, I'd be like, hey, you're creating an Andy avatar, an administrative digital afterlife Andy avatar. Then in case when you, like a Killman speech, like Andy's gone or incapacitated, and now his family has this everlasting Andy available to take care of the administrative pieces. But Andy, from a grieving standpoint, like, is that going to become your grief bot? Like, is your grandchildren and family and wife like, hey, Andy, I miss, just like, have you just live on forever? Is that your plan?
I don't expect that they'll turn me off, but I will, so yes, I think that it will have both the administrative function, but also one of the projects that everybody here on the Daily AI Show knows that I'm working on is a life chronicle that is a very deep record of my experience in life, going all the way back to the beginning, and the AI application that supports the ongoing collection and refinement of that information. That doesn't really exist for most people. Even if someone in your past who's passed away wrote a memoir, well, that's snippets of a life. And I'm trying to do something a little more comprehensive that lays things out structurally about, what my life experience was, without any expectation that anybody's going to have the time to review that. But as and when they might interact with that AI representation of me, they could probe and dig into, and the underlying data set would enable that avatar to respond faithfully in my style and with the data that I've left there for this purpose. It would be able to respond with clarity and with real information, not just suppositions as I might have to create about my father's life, who had no such digital legacy.
But all right, let's open it up to the conversation because again, Danielle, you're the ops person, so we can look from an operational standpoint, but then we have to look like the humanistic, like what if you died tomorrow, Andy? Does that mean that your wife can't move on to a new relationship because you're like embedded in the whole home system?
Oh no, my wife's quite capable of ignoring me even while I'm here. So I think she'll move on just fine. Yeah.
Danielle, as an outsider listening to this conversation, what do you think? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute.
We've
Nope.
lost Danielle's voice.
Oh,
Important
yeah.
voice
I
to
think
lose right at
we've
this
lost
moment.
you.
Oh.
Danielle, take a second and look at all the StreamYard settings. Sometimes that gets a little funky, or you might have to drop and come back in to reset that. We've had that mic issue in the past.
Not StreamYard though. That was our old platform that used to happen more
Streamlabs,
on
yeah.
than StreamYard. But usually, and Danielle, he's right. If you can hear us, one of the fastest things to do if it just isn't working is go out and come back in, and we'll bring it back up to the stage, and usually that will reset.
So while we're pausing to give Danielle time to go out and come back, or somehow regain her voice, which we really want to hear, I want to ask you, Nikki, now from the perspective of a retired executive in a succession of companies over the course of my lifetime, your company Endevo it's focused on delivering this kind of anticipatory service
Planning
or
process.
awareness, planning process to employees of corporations in order to defend against the disruption that occurs when an important player in the human organization at a company, is gone. And also importantly, to have each individual in the human organization prepare for their own family's responses to the loss of that employment and the loss of the person when they
Or the
pass
disruption
on.
when there's a diagnosis or a long-term
Right.
need.
So this is kind of a pre-retirement, context for your company. But now I'm just going to share with you that looking back over all of the many companies that I have left, and not presuming that I'm more important, but also having the experience more important than anyone else in the company. But when I've left those companies, and or when I've been a part of a company where somebody important left, they are forgotten almost instantly. It doesn't really
By
matter.
design.
Which is good. I think it's important that the tribe carries on without necessarily pining unnecessarily for the contributions and or the presence of somebody who has moved on, whether moving to another job or passing
Another
on.
dimension.
In
Yeah.
those instances as well. So I'm a skeptic when it comes to really needing to prepare an organization for that outside of the retention of corporate knowledge. And most companies, even in the absence of these sort of digital twin kind of mechanisms that are posited now to try to capture the corporate knowledge of a person in order to either replace them with AI or to be in a position of defense against the loss of that corporate knowledge that's held in the mind of one person on that job. Human organizations have not suffered, it seems, from the loss of any one individual in that process. Now, when a plane crashes and the entire executive team is gone, that's a different case entirely. But even then, if there's an engine that is driving the economic success of a company, there's a replacement team.
I'm going to push back on you. Maybe I'm going to push hard back on that one. Sure. Because it's not just the business continuity conversation. We're going to be talking about the productivity of an employee who's caregiving for someone who has gotten a diagnosis or in long-term care. I really want Danielle to jump in.
Oh, that's an aspect that I hadn't considered. Yeah.
Oh, so well, there's a wake-up call for you.
Well, but I'll just say part of my skepticism is I've never observed that in my entire career. I've never seen someone have to be removed from the organizations flow of productive work product as a result of having to caretake for somebody who was ill. So I don't have a personal experience of that.
Danielle, are you back?
No.
No, unfortunately, no.
So frustrating.
We could read your lips, though.
Yeah.
But I'm probably glad that didn't come out.
So Jimmy and Brian, before I'm going to take a breath because based on what
For sure.
what Andy said, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I kind of wanted to focus on, and Brian, jump in here if you have a comment in a specific context, but I'm an applied kind of guy, right? So I like to see things applied. So, and I know this will be the first time anyone has ever thought about digital thanatology and just going through the steps. And like when you held up the phone, it's like, well, what do we really have to do? What I would like to know, what are the things that people don't think about? Like you had mentioned MFA or 2FA. What are those practical things that people should be thinking about with the advent of how far what level of technology we have and how it's integrated in our lives? You also mentioned the platforms, putting on video of that process, and I think I'd like to think I'm data privacy oriented, so my operational methodology or security it's my day-to-day. But with the recording of data for everything that we do, what are the big things that everybody can pay attention to right now and just think about it and figure out, okay, I need a plan for that.
Yep.
That's kind of what I want to know, like, right now.
All right, well, let's just do that. That's that super high level, right? So if we can put we can lock the car, and that's what I'll tell you how to lock the car, but that doesn't mean that if somebody really wants to get in, they could just smash the window. Right? So the question that I'm going to pose is, with everything going on, AGI at our doorstep, will we own our passwords, our logins? Like how is encryption really going to be managed in the next 12, 18 months, 3 years, right? So that's what we need to be starting to look at, is what is password management going to look like? As of today, though, there are things we can do, such as step one. I always tell people, the phone company has more information and more control over your life than the government does right now. We are the first generation to die with more digital assets than physical ones. And the majority of our digital assets are managed either on our phone. Now, they're saying SaaS is dying. So it's like, we're scrambling because we're in this chasm of like what life looked like yesterday, or what life looked like at 6 a.m. this morning, and what life is going to look like, on Friday. And it could be very different. But we have to at least start to take the steps. So step one, secure your phone, right? To make sure that on iPhones, you have your legacy contacts set up on your iPhones. If you're an Android user like myself, that you've gone into your Google inactive account manager and set all those things up. That you make sure, number one, know, love, and trust. Who are the people in your life that you know, you love, and or trust? Because those are the people that are going to be shutting down your life. Maybe you're not dead. Perhaps you are. Maybe you're just in a car accident and incapacitated for days, weeks, or months. Who's going to manage that? Who's going to be managing your recurring subscriptions to make sure that all of those auto pays are, that there's enough money in the account, that they have access to the account, right? So this is all that access password management piece that people don't have. Danielle, this is if you're available. Yes,
Danielle's trying very hard. We're chatting on the backside. She's gone through 3 different mics.
But this is where the building out an operation, like our personal lives have to be operationalized, Now, Andy, you have a superpower. Most people in this world don't, right? You don't just have the ability to the foresight, but you also have the skill set to be able to not just manage the physical copies, but now you can translate those physical copies into an AI agent that can manage the digital piece. Like that's like a superpower that like most people don't have. I could barely get people to just say, hey, can you set up your digital life, your legacy contacts on your iPhone? So Brian, like, do you have a minute? Can I pressure test a little bit of your plan?
Sure.
Okay. So you have a will?
Yep.
Okay. Where is it stored?
Digitally, as well as there's physical copies, because there has to be.
Who has access to those physical copies?
Without getting in the right people, and there's backups to the backups.
Okay. Is it just you and your wife, or do you have like secondary and tertiary named on those documents?
We have to, because of my daughter, in case my wife and I pass at the same time.
Do you have a will? Do you have a trust for your daughter?
Yeah, we have, and it also it stipulates if my wife and I were to pass at the same time, whose will supersedes the other.
Right. So, I mean, again, so Brian's a smart guy, but most people, and I'm talking to people who have wealth managers. They have wealth managers, but they have no plan. Like I go in and I do workshops with these wealth managers because they've got clients that they've had for 20 years. They've got millions, but they don't have, but they're good. They die in intestate. They die without a will or a trust or power of attorney. And can I ask, like, when did you and your wife actually, like your daughter's 15, when did you actually start getting your documents in order?
We've had them in order. We just did a full digital refresh in the last 2 months because of this big trip.
Okay. So so we're doing that checklist, right? So there's the legal piece, the financial piece. Like, do you have everything aggregated, allocated? I always talk to my clients and be like, life is good. And we want to build out this end of life plan. We want to build out this, you die tomorrow, you get the terminal diagnosis, because then I'll ask you, Brian, what about your parents? Your mom's gone, but do you have in-laws or parents still around?
Yeah. 2 in-laws and my dad's still around.
So if you got that call from them, are you ready for your life to stop? Put on pause your business, your family, because now you have to take care of them. Are you guys ready for that?
Yeah. And, I'm not necessarily, obviously my wife would be the one for the in-laws, but, and I'm also have an older brother. So there's an order there as far as that goes. So, yeah, I mean, but also I think, like you said, that you have 3 other siblings yourself, and not everybody handles it the same. So, having been around a lot more death and dying from being an EMT and firefighter, and also being bedside or on the ground next to people when they pass, I think it gives you a bit of a ability to work through it. I don't know what that is, being in an ER a lot and living those kind of hours and stuff. So I think the way I look at it too is like everybody sort of has their own, like Andy has his superpowers, like you're saying, like everybody kind of has their superpowers that make them unique in the way that they're able to handle it. And maybe not every one person can handle everything, but if you set up enough of a team, hopefully you have the people in the right places who are good at what they are. My wife is wonderful at project management. So if you need somebody to dot all the I's and cross the T's, that's my wife, right? So I think that's the way I think about it in my head, at least. By the way,
again, I
no
think
expert on
this
this.
is an unusual crowd.
A whole lot of things. So.
But it's an unusual crowd because I can't tell you how many estate attorneys don't have comprehensive plans, or physicians, like ER docs, like they see life. Oh, I mean, I have spoken to too many police officers and firefighters that they just assume that they've dealt with the physical piece, but they haven't done the administrative stuff.
Yeah.
And they're not ready for the administrative stuff. And the heartbreaking story of the police officer's wife, the cop dies after 30 years of being on the force, and she doesn't have access to his digital life. She didn't know about all the reoccurring subscriptions. Like, these are the pieces that, like you said, your wife is a project manager. So maybe you and Andy are kind of the outliers, but let me just ask, I mean, if you died tomorrow, does your wife want a digital Brian, like around, embedded as an
We
avatar?
talk about this a lot on the show. So I know Nikki, over 700 shows, this has come up. Jimmy knows this too. Like I would have this is me. I would have no problem with a digital version of my mom had that existed. It won't, there's nothing I could do about that. But had my mom been okay with it, I personally would have no problem talking to my Echo in the house, hearing my mom's actual voice in today's technology. She passed in 2006, wasn't a thing. But I personally would have no problem with that. But we've talked about it many times about like that is definitely not that's like a 50-50 split at best of people in our comments, as well as who's been on the show, about who would be okay or not okay with that. Because I think it does bring up a lot of your points about how people grieve and that process. And it's not going to be. So I don't know the answer for my wife. I'm okay with it. I would set myself up like Andy, and I have worked, not to the depth that Andy does. That's the goal, to be more like Andy in a lot of ways, actually. But that's one of the goals. But what I would say is, I would work to make sure it exists, because that's all I can do, and it's really out of my control anyway, beyond me. Yeah.
So let me ask, how do you guys feel about Meta's new patent that they got back in December of 2025?
Remind me of what it is, because I'm not sure.
Okay, so right, so they received the patent. They now have the AI ability to continue to create content on ghost accounts.
Yes,
Because all those photos and pictures and comments, we don't own them. Meta owns them. All the platforms own them. People don't realize that. Use my free platform,
right.
Give me your data. Oh, you forgot to shut down or memorialize your account. Well, now we own that account. Oh, and by the way, we're just going to continue to create content of your beloved person because we own it. So how do you guys feel about that?
Well, I think they have a non-exclusive right to do derivative work on the content that's there, and I think it's improbable that they would en masse start to generate continuous posting from deceased persons' accounts. I'm just a skeptical person when it comes to whether there would be any commercial benefit to that. Whatever, it would pollute their own platform to have that happening. So that they got a patent, I would just say, oh, well, okay, you have the right to do that. If you ever tried to do that, and somebody objected to it, you'd probably have an equal obligation, commercial obligation to cease and desist that. So I'm not worried about that particular eventuality. And I also think that if, let's say, they tried to contest the right that I have to use my descendants the right to generate content based on collection of data from the account that they now have control over, or some level of simultaneous control along with Facebook or Instagram or etc., that the enforcement issue makes the whole question moot. Like, how would Facebook enforce against people among the billions of people on the planet who use their platform? So it's a thought experiment. I understand your point, but I don't really have too great a concern about that particular eventuality.
Jimmy?
For me, I think it's a data privacy issue. I would just want to make sure to clarify that if I close my account, that all data derived from me is also removed. I don't know.
Not.
That's,
I mean,
I don't think that's
not.
in
If you look
terms.
at GDPR, right? I mean, you're going based on, if GDPR, there was no language in GDPR or in California Act about postmortem. All the regulations are about if you're alive today. So no one has taken on that definition and putting up guardrails of what does it mean? What does that? I mean, we're here for what, 80, 100 years, however long. But our digital afterlife is going to be forever, especially in an AGI world.
And if you've ever worked with any of these companies in their their tech support. Like it's a bear just to try and change your password, or if you've lost access to your account, or any of those kinds of things. Can you just imagine if your family
By
member has to
design?
go, oh, this event happened, please remove it, because neither Facebook, Meta, or Google has someone I can go, hello, person. I need you, specifically you on the phone, to do this thing for me. That
Well,
that
you're
doesn't
never going to
And
get
even if
anybody
you
on the
did, they wouldn't
phone.
have the authority.
Yeah, well, that's
You'd
that.
finally try
And
and
that's
get
the other
somebody, and they
thing.
wouldn't have the authority anyway.
So
I
here's
did
the
track a Google number once, and it just led me to a recording that says, "Please check our FAQ for your answer."
so here's
Nice of
here's
you.
here's the reality. And Jimmy, you were asking for like, what is that checklist? I'm happy to give people the checklist of like, yes, your phone, yes, your passwords, yes, all your financial accounts, yes, all of your social media accounts. Like, yes, you need to put together a final playbook, right? So if you death, dying, or incapacitation, that you can, the person, whoever's your no love and trust people are going to be able to go in and just organize and shut down your life, because not everyone's going to have an Andy bot, maybe an Andy AI that I can, go administrative Nikki to go in and do that. But we have to understand that it's by design.
Mhm.
And I just want to share with a little bit. So I went to the Consensus conference in Miami a couple weeks ago. So this is like the largest Web3 conference out there. And I was like 3 rows back from Kevin O'Leary making his wonderful announcement about his Stratos project that he didn't say on stage that it was 40,000 acres of data center. He didn't say 40,000. He just was very proud saying that he's got this new data project. So the buzz at Consensus, there were 2 things. One, they said that blockchain walked so AI could run. So now blockchain can sprint. So blockchain walked, right? And blockchain for the last, since, Bitcoin was released back in 2009, it's been very like user, UX, UI has been very painful. But then all of a sudden the AI popped up and here we are, we're like, AI is running. And now all of a sudden we're popping up with the data centers, and that's the sprint. Hello, little one. And now we're in the sprint.
Here's
Why
my
are we in
digital legacy.
I love the it's a mini me.
He's so big. Oh my
A
God.
second me getting so big with this cute smile. Love the PJs. So, let's talk about, what do these data centers mean? Why do we need 40,000 acres of data centers? And why all of a sudden, like, it's all over my news. I live in Pennsylvania. They're popping up all over the place. So now you want to go down the rabbit hole. It's like, what are they going to be tracking? They're not just going to be tracking, and of course I used to wear an Oura ring. I've been wearing an Oura ring since 2015. I took that Oura ring off because it's like, those aren't the only data points they're going to be tracking now. Because otherwise, why would they need 40,000 acres? Why are they willing to sacrifice the environment for these data centers? Like, what are they tracking? I've seen proposals where they're looking to put data centers on the moon. Brian, Andy, why do we need so much storage? Because they're going to be storing all of our digital afterlife. They're going to be like, it's not just Nikki today, it's Nikki tomorrow. And how is that going to be generated and populated and aggregated? I'll just take a pause and breathe and let you guys kind of chime in.
I mean, I think whatever our current needs are for data centers will multiply by 40x over the next 10 years. Like whatever it is today is just a small drop in the bucket. Now, we talk on the show all the time, Nikki, about efficiencies and ways that data, more can be done with less space. So I think that is also bound to happen with technology as it becomes more efficient. So will data centers. More will be able to happen on less land. We'll see all this Moore's law, all the things that happen there. But it doesn't change the fact that I think for the next 2 decades, we'll probably be behind in the amount of data centers that we actually do need in order to progress AI.
But then we're back to what does it mean to be human? So they're going to destroy the environment. They're going to destroy the environment in order to get these data centers up.
Listen, my wife and I talk about this all the time.
there's a mental mind
I
fuck
get
going
it.
on here.
I
Like,
get it, because the core thing that my wife and I talk about, and maybe it's your point too, and we're totally on the different page of each other. My side of it is I fundamentally believe that AI will solve, be part of the solution to cure all disease. I fundamentally believe that. I believe that my mom wouldn't have died at 56 in 20 years, right? I believe that. Okay, that's not everybody, but that's I have a very, positive outlook on what AI can do. That doesn't take away what AI also can do that's negative, right? I'm not avoiding that. But my point to it is, Nikki, is I take the stance of it is possible that we will do more, that in order to achieve disease-free state, in order to achieve things that are good for humanity, we may do quicker damage early in order to achieve it faster. My wife's position on it would be there's no exception for damaging the environment more. I don't want more data centers. And if that means it takes longer to cure cancer, so be it. We're just on two different ends of that argument, though, to be honest with you. And I get her point, and I fundamentally get it, and it's solid. And maybe she gets my point a little less, but I am more of the move fast and break stuff, because I think the future is overwhelmingly positive for society. But not everybody's on that side.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, I was just going to say my viewpoint on this particular topic is, and again, I see both sides of those things. My only pushback is we have the ability to do it correctly right now. It just costs more.
Yeah.
So if cost wasn't the factor, then you could do it all right. You could build a data center correctly and environmentally sound. You could build more energy infrastructure using the current technology, making it self-sustainable, contained. And then we're talking about energy production, solar, wind, all of those kinds of things. We have the ability to do it now. We have the ability to generate all the water that we need by building desalination plants. We don't.
Not if we bomb the shit out of them.
So
not if they become like targets of war.
Well, what I'm saying is we have the ability to do it, quote unquote, correctly, right? So if it's just a matter of cost, then we could investigate, or we could build towards that future. Maybe it's a little slower, but I think if the decisions that are being made now about data centers, about technology and implementing it, the issue becomes, can we do it the right way, right? And that explores, ethical AI and, environmentally sound AI development and things like that. But we have the ability to. What stops us, or what stops that progression, is to do it faster and cheaper, not more correctly. So that would be the only point I would add to that.
So we're back to the human equity, right? So what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human in this AI world that we're living in? And we've gone from bedside hospice conversation, right? So we're in the deep emotional, like the day-to-day, taking one breath at a time, taking the, letting go and saying goodbye to our loved ones. What does that mean? Oh, by the way, did our loved ones give us digital consent to post their likeness online that now will become a digital asset to somebody's platform that we don't own, that we don't control, that we don't have access as a sovereign being? Oh, by the way, that's going to live forever. And at the same time, while I'm grieving, while I'm going through the most human emotion of grieving, do I have to go through probate? Do I have all the passwords? Was the deed put into the right, term? Do I have all the contact for the cars and all that human, day-to-day stuff that Andy is now trying to solve? That maybe there'll be a bot out there, an agent that would be able to just, go ahead and manage all that stuff for us at some point and take that human stressor out of it. I don't know. But then we need more data centers. That's going to kill our environment. We can go back and forth on that. So and I know Brian had to leave. He told us that he was leaving. So thanks for staying as long as you did and contributing to the conversation. But Andy, can we have, this is what I believe. Let me know what you think. I think AI is going to be the bridge between the physical and the spiritual world. Like, I don't know where you are in the world, but
and I'm practicing it. I don't have it all in place yet, but the tools are rapidly converging on a time when all of this could be done without the significant effort that I'm putting into it. You could probably strap it up pretty well, and a starting place for all of the necessary things that you need to pass on to your loved ones, in the unfortunate event of an unexpected passing, is a shared Google Doc. I have to trust some level of privacy and security to some system out there that can be the intermediary between me and them, and it's not going to be handwritten notes. And so
it should
right
be.
now,
It should be both. Just
yeah,
as a thanatologist,
I print
we
it
do
out,
it.
I suppose, but
Yeah.
right at the
Because
moment,
floods and
the
fires
way that
happen, and then cyber hacks happen. So, and electricity
Yeah.
can go out. So we need both
I'm,
systems.
I'm knowingly incurring that risk that somebody could break into my personal account in Google and find, nested in a bunch of other things, the document that has all of these things that my wife and daughter know they have access to, and they can access on their phone, that lists everything of importance, every password, every account, links, all are built into that. And now I'm announcing to the world that it does exist. So don't hack me, thank you. But anyway.
So what do you think about making it like because on my roadmap for my company, we are looking at, again, how to take something like, can you just get, death is not a taboo topic. Can we at least start talking about it? So I appreciate that, all the way to, we can tokenize death as a real world asset and store it on the blockchain. Like, how do we go from set up your legacy contacts, you're going to die tomorrow, versus all the way to secured storage on the blockchain, traceability, trackability, and interoperability?
So as we wrap up the topic, I just looked at the time here, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. And don't worry, we have just a little bit more. But Nikki, we like you said, we've gone from 0 to 1, A to Z, covered a bunch of different aspects and definitely topics and things to think about for thanatology or digital thanatology. If there was one thing that you'd want people to consider or take a step or anything like that, how would you sum that up in that one thing?
Part of living is dying. We're all going to die. It's good to have a plan. Let's just plan it. Just put a plan together. Proactive, educate yourself, project manage it, de-emotionalize that it's a taboo topic, and just realize, just like Andy, be like Andy, that you need to just have the conversations with your know, love, and trust people. And not just for yourself, but like I said, if you have 2 or 4-legged children and you have a generation above you, and you are that person in the middle that's going to need to manage everything, you need to have a plan for everybody. Project manage it, de-emotionalize it. What are the risks? What are the scenarios? What are the, if this happens, then this is my plan. So understand that you don't want to be planning during the crisis. You want to be planning, and that, to answer Andy's question, is like, my company, we bring end of life planning as a wellness program to companies and corporations, because it's not just the business continuity, but when you have an employee that's dealing with death, dying, or incapacitation, it affects them. Absenteeism, turnover, mental health issue, right? That presentism, like to be able to be present when I have to deal with probate, or mom, I need to find a place for mom to go because she's having memory care issues. That is going to impact me as a caregiver / also employee. So employers are now bringing into their HR space some of these mental health administrative tools So that one piece, if you're asking me, is just plan. Just what is your plan?
All right. So everyone, consider making the plan and implementing it. And you said something, Nikki, that I really want to have a T-shirt for. Be like Andy. I kind of
Yeah.
want to have that T-shirt.
No, it's this is be like Nikki. Think about these things. It's important. And thank you, Nikki, for thinking about it. Not only that, but putting together a work plan for people that they can follow to get prepared.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So
we have that step-by-step process, project plan to live fully, die ready.
All right. So let's move on to the final bit. If you've got to go, I understand.
I have to go. Yeah, I apologize.
All right. Thanks
good.
for sticking around,
Very
Andy. Great conversation as always. For those of you who are still watching, now it's time for AI in science. And Nikki, if you want to stick around for this, that's perfectly fine. It does actually have to do with a little bit of thanatology and digital thanatology. Today's AI in science is grief bots of the living. How two researchers are trying to get ahead of an AI use case that hasn't quite arrived yet. So, one of the harder things in grief research is something clinicians have been saying for years, that you can grieve someone who's still alive. The family therapist Pauline Boss has been writing about this since the late 70s. She calls it ambiguous loss, situations where a person is physically present but psychologically absent. Dementia is the most familiar case. The person is still in front of you. Who they used to be is gradually leaving. Now, separately, AI systems that simulate the dead have been growing into an industry. Grief bots, dead bots, the digital afterlife industry, built from people's emails, photos, voice recordings, and social media. Everything written about these tools so far has been about bereavement after death. But late last month, two researchers in Israel published in Frontiers in Genetics the first formal ethical framework for what happens when this technology gets pointed at someone who is still alive. So where's the field right now? There is already a small academic field around grief bots. The most cited recent paper comes from the Cambridge group, Tomas Holonek and Katarzyna Nowacki-Balinska, who published in Philosophy and Technology back in 2024. They map what's owned to three different groups: the people who data trains the grief bot, the people who hold that data, and the people who actually interact with the simulation. Empirical work is starting to come in alongside the theory. A 2023 qualitative study from Anna Zigkow and colleagues at the University of Kent talked about bereavement users who describe GriefBot conversations as a safe space for emotional expression they couldn't find with family or therapists. Now, that pattern is a little complicated. It's comforting in some ways, but isolating in others, and the authors flagged both directions. On the commercial side, the numbers are growing fast. Industry analysts put the digital afterlife market at roughly $22 billion in 2024, with projections of around $80 billion by 2034. Voice cloning, personality modeling, conversational replication, all off-the-shelf technologies at this point. Everything written about these tools so far assumes the represented person is dead. So what are our takeaways here? One, GriefBot research has matured fairly quickly. Cambridge frameworks, qualitative studies showing both supportive and isolating effects, and industry projected to nearly quadruple by 2034. And also, every existing framework assumes that the represented person is deceased. So what just happened? So the paper is by Alexander Manovich, a clinical psychologist at the Rupin Academic Center and the University of Haifa, and Yuval Haber of Bar Ilan University. The concept they introduced is called premorbid bot. In the paper's exact words, a chatbot designed to simulate the personality of a living person as they were prior to the onset of illness. The case Manovich and Haber build is the analysis around is dementia. Roughly 57 million people live with it globally by the WHO's 2025 fact sheet. And caregivers experience some of the most well-documented pre-death grief in clinical literature. A premorbid bot is a different thing from the AI categories already being studied. Grief bots represent the dead. Caregiver support tools provide practical guidance rather than companionship. And companion apps like Replica are fictional characters with no real referent. What the premorbid bot does is take a real named still living person, their actual emails, voicemails, writing, social media, and rebuild who they used to be before they started disappearing. The ethical framework Manovich and Haber bring to this boat is Beauchamp and Childress's 4 principles of biomedical ethics: autonomy, beneficence, non-malfeasance, and justice, applied to what they call the caregiving dyad, the patient and the family member doing the caring. The questions get hard pretty quickly. Whose consent matters when one party can no longer give it and the other is still in the middle of grieving? What does it do to a caregiver if the simulation starts feeling more present than the actual person in the next room? And what happens when the simulated voice of who someone used to be starts speaking in ways that conflict with what they need right now? Everything required to build a premorbid bot is already feasible. What's missing is any agreed framework for how it should be used. So what are the takeaways here? 1, the premorbid bot is the first formal concept for AI systems that simulate a living person's pre-illness personality, a distinct ethical category from existing grief bots. And 2, Manovich and Haber apply Beauchamp and Childress's 4 biomedical ethics principles to the caregiving dyad and service consent, dependency, and harm questions no existing framework was designed to handle. So what does this mean for the field? So Manovich and Haber also propose a organizing framework. They call it ALIVE. 5 conditions that all need to be met for ethically responsible use of any technology like this. A for autonomy and consent, L for living presence, which is their term for the basic fact that the simulated person is still alive and still changing. I for intended benefit, V for vigilance against harm, and E for equity and accountability. Living presence is the unusual one. Existing GriefBot ethics has handled consent retrospectively through estates, families, digital wills written before the person died. None of that machinery quite fits when the person is still alive, possibly cognitively impaired and possibly disagreeing with the caregiver about what the simulation should be allowed to say or do. The framework says any deployment should prioritize engagement with the living person over interaction with the simulation, and features that encourage prolonged or exclusive use at the expense of direct contact should be avoided by design. Now, this is not a clinical trial. It's an anticipatory ethics paper. No premorbid bots are deployed at scale yet, but the authors flag that informal use is probably already happening and that academic frameworks and regulation usually arrive years after a technology does and not before. So what are the takeaways here? The ALIVE framework, autonomy and consent, living presence, intended benefit, vigilance against harm, and equity and accountability. It's offered as a precondition. All 5 must be satisfied for responsible use. And living presence is the novel condition, the ethical recognition that the simulated person is still alive with implications no death-based framework was designed to handle. So what are our broader implications and caveats? Well, there's a few caveats. This is a perspective article in Frontiers in Genetics, ELSI section, short for ethical, legal, and social implications, a category for academic work on the ethics and social impact of new science. It's a framework, not a clinical result, and Manovich and Haber say so directly. The ALIVE model is a conceptual foundation, not an operationalized tool. Where the paper gets interesting is in the last few pages. The same framework, they note, applies well beyond dementia to families of abducted or missing persons, to people in comas with severe traumatic brain injury or severe psychiatric illness, even to relationship dissolution. Anywhere a significant connection has been disrupted, illness, disappearance, divorce, the end of a close friendship, the technology to generate an artificial version of the missing person is now within reach. Frameworks like this one usually arrive late. Commercial grief bot deployment has been years ahead of the academic and regulatory conversation about it, and Manovich and Haber are arguing the other direction, that for this particular use case, the ethical thinking should be in place before the first pre-morbid bot launches and not after. So what are our final takeaways? The framework generalizes beyond dementia to any context of ongoing ambiguous loss, abductions, comas, brain injury, even close relationship dissolution. And finally, the paper's central argument is that anticipatory ethics is more useful than reactive ethics, and that the time to have the conversation is before the first product ships and not after. So in the larger theme of our place with this newer technology, the digital world, and death, we're experiencing multiple things that are happening all at once, and how our relationship with people, and like you said before, Nikki, what does it mean to be human in this digital age, in this AI age? And I know it's always easy to say more to think about, but it is something, like you said, is make it less taboo to talk about these subjects so that it can be discussed. So any final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
I think it's just what your team is doing, which is just taking these topics, putting them on the table, and everything goes. Not to be afraid to talk about what socially might be scary, or also just let's start planning, let's start talking, because the future is here today. It's not tomorrow.
And on that note, we will wrap up for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and sticking it out. This has been a long one. If you want to continue this kind of conversation, please join our Slack community at dailyaishowcommunity.com. It's a free community. Lots of great people are in there talking about lots of different aspects of AI, and you can continue this and any other conversation. This is the middle of the week, so we still have more episodes for Thursday and Friday. And don't forget to check out the Conundrum that comes out on Saturdays. And of course, our newsletter every Sunday. So with that, thank you, chat, for sticking it out. Always a great conversation. And thank you for everybody who's watching just a little later. So if you've got the chance, make sure to click the things that make the dings and keep your minds and your hearts open. Aloha.